This is hospital CCTV footage from the day Angela Craig lost brain activity. That's her husband, Dr. James Craig. Watch what he does. He doesn't go to her room first. He goes somewhere else. Prosecutors say he's carrying a syringe. He's in there for just under 2 minutes. Within minutes of him leaving, Angela crashes. Prosecutors called what you just watched the final act of a months-long poisoning. The last dose, administered by her own husband, in a hospital room, while she was already dying. This is the story of how Angela Craig was killed and how her husband almost got away with it. Angela Dawn Craig was born on April 15, 1979, in Dodge City, Kansas. She was the youngest of 10 siblings, the baby of the family. And if you believe what the people who loved her say, which I absolutely do, she was also the heart of it. Growing up the youngest of 10 in a house full of noise and personality will either break you or build you into someone extraordinary. For Angela, it built her. Her faith was the anchor of her identity. Angela was a devoted member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and that faith wasn't just a Sunday obligation for her. She was a choir director, a teacher, a youth leader, and she eventually became the family genealogist, the official keeper of her family's history. She was also quietly creative in ways people didn't always expect. Her son once said she loved a lot of things, but she didn't have time for them all. She had 6 children instead, he said. And that line right there tells you everything about Angela Craig. At 20 years old, Angela married a young man named James Craig. The date was December 18, 1999. She was the youngest of 10, full of hope. Over the next 2 decades, Angela and James built what looked from the outside like an extraordinary life together in Aurora, Colorado, a suburb of Denver, nestled against the Rocky Mountain backdrop. 6 children, a thriving dental practice, a community that admired them, a faith that bound them. That was Angela Craig's world. But what was happening beneath the surface of that world, what Angela herself didn't fully know, is that the man she trusted most in the world is slowly killing her. If you lived in Aurora and knew the Craig family, here's what you saw. A husband and wife who worked side by side every day. James ran Summerbrook Dental, his own practice, and Angela was right there with him. She was a supportive wife any man could ask for, not just as a supportive spouse, but as a genuine partner. A former employee named Chelsea Otoya, who worked there with them, later told CBS News' 48 Hours. Dr. Craig and Angela Craig were just like 2 peas in a pod. They would play pranks on each other all day long. They seemed like the perfect couple. From the outside, it was the American dream. Successful small business, big family, faith-centered life, suburban house, morning workouts, protein shakes. Remember that detail. Because what investigators eventually discovered is that the most ordinary, loving gesture in that morning routine, a husband making his wife a protein shake, was not what it seemed at all. James Tolliver Craig was 47 years old when his wife died, a licensed dentist with his own practice, a father of 6, a church member, a man who, by all outward appearances, had built a life that most people would admire. But there was a version of James Craig that Angela knew about, partially, and there was a version that she didn't know about at all. And it's that second version that turns this story from a tragedy into something darker. Angela knew her husband had been unfaithful, more than once. Her journal, introduced as evidence at trial years later, makes clear that she was aware of at least some of his affairs. In one entry, she wrote, "Simply and heartbreakingly, he doesn't love me, and I don't blame him. This is a woman who had given 2 decades of her life to a marriage. Her sister, Toni Kofod, later testified that Angela had confided in her about the struggles in her marriage, about the infidelity. She was in a silent pain, but she stayed because of her family, because of her faith. What Angela didn't know, what she could not have known, was that by early 2023, James Craig had begun what prosecutors would later describe as the most significant affair of his marriage, and that this one was different because it seemed to have flipped a switch in him.
In early 2023, James Craig attended a dental conference in Las Vegas. It was there that he met Dr. Karen Kane, an orthodontist from Texas. By all accounts, Kane had no idea what she was walking into. Their connection developed quickly, and within weeks, Craig was telling her that he was already separated from his wife, that they were divorcing, that he was living in a separate apartment. None of it was true. When Angela Craig was alive and well at home in Aurora with their 6 children, James was texting another woman about a new life he was planning to build. And when Angela went to visit family in Utah in early March 2023, attending a genealogy conference with her sister, doing the thing she loved most, Craig texted Kane, "Maybe she will decide to stay gone for a long time." And this is where the story takes a turn that is almost impossible to comprehend. Because within days of sending that text, James Craig began purchasing poison. Summerbrook Dental had multiple exam rooms. Room 9 had a computer. And on that computer, under a user account called Jim and Waffles, which investigators later tied to James Craig, someone was conducting some deeply disturbing internet searches. On February 28, 2023, the search history shows queries including "How to make murder look like a heart attack" and "A dosage of tetrahydrozoline that is fatal." A tetrahydrozoline? That's the active ingredient in over-the-counter eye drops. On March 1st, the same day Angela left for Utah, another search. How long does it take to die from arsenic poisoning? And according to the 52-page probable cause affidavit, one of the searches asked, "Is there such a thing as an undetectable poison?" And another, "How many grams of pure arsenic will kill a human?" Then came the orders. James Craig used Amazon to purchase potassium cyanide and had it shipped directly to his dental practice. He also ordered arsenic, which was delivered to the family home on March 4th, the same day Angela was on her way back from Utah. While Angela was in Utah doing her research as a genealogist, James was at home receiving packages of poison. On Monday, March 6, 2023, Angela Craig woke up, changed into workout clothes, and walked into the kitchen. James had already made her a protein shake. Only this time, it wasn't just a protein shake. It was something that would eventually be the end of her. That morning, she worked out. But by mid-morning, something was wrong. She texted James, "My stomach feels fine, but my head feels funny and dizzy. Very strange." James took her to the emergency room at Advent Health Parker Hospital. Doctors ran an MRI, a CT scan, blood work. Nothing came back abnormal. She was sent home. Thursday, March 9, Angela drank another protein shake in the morning. This time, the symptoms came faster and harder. Her kids found her passed out on the floor. She was rushed to the same hospital again, but this time she stayed. Blood samples taken at 11:24 a.m. on March 9th showed a high and toxic level of arsenic in her system. Angela remained hospitalized for 6 days. Her condition was improved slightly. On March 14th, she was discharged. Still no explanation. That evening, kitchen security cameras captured footage of James Craig making his wife another protein shake. The following morning, March 15th, Angela was home but barely functioning. Her brother, Mark Prey, and his wife Renee were there, helping, because by this point, the family had grown deeply concerned. Mark had traveled from out of town to be with his sister during what everyone hoped was a temporary illness.
James Craig was not home that morning. He called Mark and instructed him to give Angela some capsules, telling him they were antibiotics that a doctor had prescribed. Within minutes, she bent forward and couldn't hold herself up. She couldn't stand. Mark and Renee rushed her to the University of Colorado Hospital. Angela Craig lost brain activity that day. On March 18th, she was declared brain dead and taken off life support. Her final words, the last question she asked before losing consciousness, were, "Why do I hurt?" She never received an answer. Here's the thing about poisoning. It is, historically, one of the hardest crimes to detect. Killers throughout history have chosen poison precisely because it mimics illness, because it creates ambiguity, because it makes death look natural. The toxicologist who testified at trial said it plainly. If you think you can poison someone and get away with it, you're going to get caught. When James Craig's business partner, Ryan Redfern, arrived at the hospital and saw Craig crying after speaking with doctors, something felt wrong to him. Not wrong like a man is upset about his wife, wrong like something else was happening entirely. Redfern pulled a nurse aside. He told her about a package he had seen delivered to the dental office just days earlier. A package labeled potassium cyanide. She called the police. And within hours, detectives from the Aurora Police Department's Major Crimes Homicide Unit had arrived at University of Colorado Hospital and launched a full investigation, while Angela Craig was still alive on life support. Within the few days of their investigation, the Aurora Police Department discovered all the shocking crimes James committed against his wife. Prosecutors later established at trial that Craig had used 3 distinct methods: spiking Angela's protein shakes with arsenic over several days, emptying prescription capsules and refilling them with cyanide, which were then administered to Angela by her unsuspecting brother, and finally, entering her hospital room and injecting a fatal dose of cyanide directly into her IV line. The coroner's final cause of death, acute cyanide and tetrahydrozoline poisoning, with subacute arsenic poisoning listed as a significant contributing condition. James Craig was interviewed by detectives, and what investigators found when they dug into his statements and compared those statements to everything else they were uncovering was a man who kept changing his story. The financial picture also began to emerge. Prosecutors suggested at trial that Craig may have been facing significant financial difficulties, that in addition to the affair and the desire to escape the marriage, there was also a substantial life insurance policy on Angela. Assistant DA Ryan Brackley said in opening statements that the payout from that policy was part of the motive. "This is not a man who wants to get divorced," senior prosecutor Michael Morrow said in closing arguments. "If he wants to get divorced, she's serving it up to him on a silver platter." James Craig was arrested on March 19, 2023, less than 24 hours after his wife died.
He was charged with first-degree murder. He pleaded not guilty. The trial began in July 2025, more than 2 years after Angela's death. It lasted nearly 2 weeks. Prosecutors called 48 witnesses. The defense did not dispute that Angela had poison in her system. They did not dispute that James Craig had been having an affair. Instead, defense attorney Ashley Whittam argued that the evidence didn't prove James was responsible, and leaned into the suggestion that Angela, broken by years of infidelity and the pain of a failing marriage, had taken her own life, and that James had, in some form, helped her do so at her own request.
The jury deliberated for more than 8 hours over 2 days. On July 30th, 2025, they returned their verdict.
We, the jury, unanimously and beyond a reasonable doubt, find the defendant, James Craig, guilty of solicitation to commit tampering with physical evidence. Verdict form, count 4, solicitation to commit perjury in the first degree, William Walden. We, the jury, unanimously and beyond a reasonable doubt, find the defendant, James Craig, guilty of solicitation to commit perjury in the first degree. Verdict form, count 5, solicitation to commit murder in the first degree, Nathaniel Harris. We, the jury, unanimously and beyond a reasonable doubt, find the defendant, James Craig.
James Craig was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 33 consecutive years for the other charges. He said nothing. His attorneys said nothing. He was led away. As of the time of this video, James Craig is incarcerated at the Denver Reception and Diagnostic Center in Denver, Colorado. 3 of the Craig children are living with James Craig's brother. The other 3 adult children are living independently. All 6 of them lost their mother. All 6 of them lost their father. In a single spring, their entire world collapsed. Rest in peace, Angela.